Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 226 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one live listener feedback podcast in Canada. We're recording on May the 6th, 2020. Joining me tonight is Gavin. I'm, of course, Andrew.
We'd love your feedback about the show, especially since this is an all-feedback show. So if you want us to do this again, send us the feedback. So please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. A version of the show is available on Stitcher and iTunes.
You can also check us out on social media. We're actually using social media. I know, I'm shocked as everyone else. Facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast and on Instagram at Canadian Patriot Podcast.
And once you've gone and liked and subscribed to all of our things, we already know that you do that with our YouTube channel, but do so on Facebook and the Gram. You can also visit us on Patreon.com and become a Patreon because we need your help. So you can get a better quality episode of the show for just $1. The more you pledge, the better the rewards are. So show you're not a communist and buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com, our homepage, and follow the link on the right.
Okay, it's time for my favorite segment. It's called What Are We Drinking? Tonight I'm drinking Grant's Scotch Whiskey.
Excellent choice. I am drinking Jack and Coke Zero.
Good stuff. We're going to go right into listener feedback. And I want to start with listener feedback with a new $2 a month Patreon. Pardon me, $2 an episode Patreon. It's not $2 a month. Andrew Darcy, thank you for becoming a Patreon. I've already sent out a message if you can get in touch with us. I know you know who we are because I know who you are. Gavin owes you a cartoon.
Yeah. We're watching you watching us.
Looking at me, holding hands, touching hands, reaching out. No, wait, COVID-19, no touching hands.
Yeah, no, that's bad. 6 feet apart.
We got a Podbean review, although I don't know how to log into Podbean, so I can't tell who wrote it or if it's good or bad, but the quote, the part that I was able to read says, "Best run ever, ha 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 ha." For episode 218, that's the It's Corona Time episode with the Corona Time intro that got us almost kicked off of YouTube again because copyright strikes.
Nice.
So
good time.
I'm going to go back to not playing music on YouTube.
Unless it's the Corona Time song.
No, definitely not, because apparently the TikTok songs get you the strikes.
Oh, well, I guess China is listening in, so.
Oh, I guess on that note, thank you for our 12 regular listeners for tuning in on an unusual time of night, and for our 5 new listeners from the RCMP, welcome.
Yes.
Apologies to the cleaning department that's going to have to take care of all the freedom loads you're leaving around your desks.
Yeah, or for clearing up any legal issues that you may have surrounding the latest order in council and how you're supposed to, administer them.
Let's start with email from Todd. Todd is a frequent writer to the show. We got an email about the significance of orders in council. And I will say that I have read this before, and it seems to me that it's from someone on Gun Nuts, although I'm sure that it's from someone else before that, because people on Gun Nuts are not typically that eloquent, in my experience. So, I'm going to do my best to read this. It's a little bit wordy. I've got a little bit of whiskey. There's like a dichotomy. We'll see what happens. It is not the Liberals who give 30 days notice. The Canadian Firearms Program revokes your registration certificates, and it's the CFP that gives 30 days to comply. And they have always given 30 days, regardless of what the government was in power. 30 days is not an arbitrary amount of time. The Firearms Act gives you 30 days to appeal a revocation and 30-day compliance windows to allow you to file an appeal. Once you file the appeal, the revocation is stayed until the judge settles it. No one is interested in getting an injunction to an order in council, because in order for it to work, you need to know the wording of the regulation before it's published, which is almost impossible. It's also unnecessary. Familiarize yourself with the details of the administration of law, and you'll realize that the ban by OIC is nothing to fear, and if you want Trudeau to lose the next election, it is actually something to hope for, as long as you possess the stones to fight it. Walk with me, metaphorically. Gun bans, hypothetically, handguns, by Order in Council on June 1st, regulations typically require 30 days before coming into force, in order to allow for the affected government departments time to respond, but let's assume Justin goes full retard and it comes into force immediately. The CFP gets notified, reviews the law, and realizes approximately 900,000 restricted firearms and 100,000 prohibited firearms. All handguns are registered, and those registrations must be revoked. By law, revocations need to be sent registered mail. That's almost 1 million pieces of correspondence that need to be generated, reviewed, stuffed into an envelope, and posted. That's one green sheet of paper for the address and one revocation notice, and possibly one for a new registration certificate if grandfathered status permits ownership of a prohib. Go to your local office supply store and look at how many boxes 3 million pieces of paper is. Imagine 1 million envelopes. Ask your mailman how many letters he can deliver in a day. The rollout will be anything but quick. The Canadian Firearms Program is already allegedly having trouble with their printers keeping up with the routine issuance of 400,000 licenses annually. Do you think the CFP is going to up and deliver 1 million pieces of registered mail at the drop of a hat? It will take months and it will be a gong show. Summer vacation is coming and the CFP has been chronically undermanned already. The malingerers will all start to take stress leave, and the union will be stepping into signal-crushing workloads and lobbying for more staff. There will be an epic number of complaints when other routine work goes undone, and their performance standards will drop below the acceptable service standards to such an extent that managers' performance bonuses will be affected. The first time a manager throws a hissy fit, there will be accusations of a toxic workplace, investigations, etc. The CFP simply does not have the manpower, tools, or the funding to roll out mass revocation of registration certificates. To contact that would... Yeah, I read that right. To contact that would take months and probably involve privacy violations. Either way, the cost will be significant and immediate. Slowly, eventually, revocation notices will start to show up. They will allow 30 days for compliance. By now, we are well into July, with the seizure notice effective in August. Just in time to ruin everyone's summer vacation and when the media will be hurting for some salacious political happenings in the middle of the summer doldrums. Gun owners everywhere vowing non-compliance. Others claiming it's impossible to comply due to the lack of responsiveness from the CFP. Local forces will claim way too cash-strapped, chasing actual criminals to follow up. Municipal forces still haven't followed up with 500,000 prohibited handguns that went dark after the last round of ban 20 years ago. This will make the news, and in a bad way for the government, right in time to kick off the election. Every revocation notice is supposed to include instructions for filing an S-74 judicial review. Every single person subject to revocation is entitled to review by a provincial judge. Now we're certain to lose that appeal, but that's not the point. First, filing the appeal buys you time. As I mentioned, the revocation notice is on hold until the judge settles it. Second, even if 20% of affected owner files appeals, we're talking 50 to 100,000 court cases that must be handled by an already overloaded legal system where legit murderers are being acquitted due to excessive delays in court times. With 100,000 judicial reviews on the books, Crown prosecutors will be first in line begging the government to rescind the revocations, otherwise more murderers will walk free. Organized criminals will take note. The provinces would need to create a whole new court just to handle the backlog and demand the federal government to cover the costs, while the media will be there asking at what cost and at what benefit. While the gun orgs may not have the resources to fight directly, they will be advocating everyone file their judicial review application. And not only is this a perfectly legitimate exercise for our legal rights, it's also an excellent PR stunt and an act of civil disobedience that will force the government's hand. Not exactly something liberals will enjoy campaigning on. Even the NDP will campaign on putting an end to it, especially with thousands of gun owners in every single riding begging any party that will listen to put an end to it. Under normal circumstances, it will take months, 6 or more, for the court to get around to handling revocation reviews. With that many all at once, it will take years, which is plenty of time for the next government to reverse. Now remember that per Section 12.8 of the Firearms Act, all guns prohibited by order in council are entitled to grandfathering. Banning by ordering in council can't change that. Only legislation can. So government goes through the pain in the ass that is the ban, doesn't actually get to remove any of the guns from circulation. Further, 12.6.1 handguns are already banned and grandfathered. Even if they were banned again by Order in Council, only legislation can repeal the original grandfathering because it was baked into the Firearms Act. So even if a new handgun ban by Order in Council was successful, that ban, ironically, let the allegedly more dangerous handguns stay in circulation while trying to seize longer-barreled sport pistols. A curious irony that no liberal will convincingly explain. If anyone in the Liberal Party had two brain cells to rub together, remains to be seen, there is no way that they would ban anything by Order in Council this close to an election. And as we already know, there isn't time for legislation. Well, the Liberals may be stupid enough, or desperate enough, to try. If you familiarize yourself with the logistics, you quickly realize it is nothing to be afraid of. The only thing to fear is a future government that has a 4-year majority and the determination to stay the course. Then there will be some tough choices ahead. Between now and October, the only thing the gun owners need to do is take a deep breath, shoot all summer, and help an unlicensed friend get their license. Help a licensed friend buy their first restricted, and be vigilant. If a revocation notice comes, file your application for judicial review, get your court date, and vote accordingly. So, that was a bit of a mouthful. On the upside, I didn't stumble that much.
It's true. Well
Now,
done.
obviously, this was written last year, talking about a perceived Order in Council that we all thought was coming over the wintertime to ban handguns after the Liberals came into power at the most recent election. Taking into account what's happened with the current Order in Council, I feel like some of these things are already taken care of, like the fact that the Order in Council says grandfathering, even though the RCMP website does not accurately reflect that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things. Hey.
Hi.
So, I think that the revocation piece is a possibility. If they do issue new registrations for our now prohibited guns, I do think that will be hilarious because it will take years for them to issue all of that paperwork.
Well, there's some interesting stuff that's going on with all of this too. So, a friend of mine recently moved. They own a couple of things that happen to be on the list that were, previously restricted and are now prohibited, and had to apply for their ATT in order to move domiciles. And when they got their list back, it didn't have their AR on it. And they called to question it, and then that had to get added on specifically under the conditions of their license and everything.
So this person has moved since the Order in Council has taken effect. So
Yes.
This past week.
Yes.
Interesting, because this is something that I pointed out on the Order in Council when I read it, was that they didn't have a contingency for anyone changing residences, because that is not called out as an exemption, because it says you cannot transport these now prohibited firearms.
Yeah. But
So
I mean,
I find that very interesting that the CFP has managed to apply some logic to this and is allowing people to transport these firearms in.
Well, I think it kind of took them, you can't stop somebody from moving their domicile from A to B. Like, that's kind of a chartered right thing.
I mean, is it? Do we have? I mean, I guess that gets into the argument of whether or not you have rights in this country.
Yeah, I mean, under the state of emergency, I guess we don't have any at all. But
well, even not under the state of emergency, like the government, I suppose, could tell you that you are not entitled to being able to change addresses.
Yeah, because I was curious about that too, and maybe they would use that as a way to force people to surrender their firearms, or opt into the grandfathering thing by saying, well, we can't issue an ATT for this, so either you grandfather it and we'll give you one, or you turn it in and then it's not a problem. So, but there's some interesting things with it. And also, like the letter was saying, that it takes time to roll these things out, the regulations, to the governing bodies that cover all of this. I can tell you from a reliable inside source that CBSA was given no heads up whatsoever on any of this stuff in terms of the OIC, and they are now struggling big time to do all of this, especially with this whole 20 millimeter nonsense, because they don't necessarily have the tools or an approved method for measuring this 20 millimeters as to where the measurement is taking place, and or if chokes need to be removed or not removed, or any other accessory that may or may not increase or decrease the bore size.
Well, I would have applied the same logic that we apply to barrel lengths, where it's irrelevant what you have attached to the end of your barrel. Your barrel is still the length, what is it, from the end of the bore to the end of the muzzle, irrelevant of what muzzle device you have on there. So even if you have a 2 foot long muzzle device, it's still counted from where the threads end, I guess, on your barrel. So that's the logic I would have applied, in which case it doesn't make a difference how fat your tubes are or how skinny your tubes are. If the bore diameter of the end of your barrel is larger than 20 millimeter, then it would be prohibited.
So if you had a removable choke that was like all the way open, like the openest of open 10 gauge chokes.
Yeah.
Because a 10 gauge is about 19-ish millimeters, 19 and a half millimeters.
So like,
so if you had the openest of open chokes, would that choke specifically be prohibited, or would it only, like, if you put it in the shotgun, does it then become prohibited?
No, that's my thing. It doesn't make a difference, because you would have to remove it. The metric we'd be using was when the choke was removed. So let's say you did have for whatever reason, your barrel was a mega bull barrel, and so because they made your chokes, let's say 3 millimeters thick, and your bore diameter is, like you said, 18, 19 millimeters. So you'd reach 21, 22 millimeters without chokes, then that's a prohibited firearm. It doesn't make a difference what choke you have in there, because the diameter of your bore is larger than 21. Doesn't make a difference what device you put in.
You're saying that regardless of the choke, the gun becomes prohibited.
Yeah. Well, that's what we applied to barrel lengths. Why would they apply different logic here?
No, and that makes sense. And based on the letter from Ed Burlew, who is a leading firearms lawyer in Ontario, his letter to the Canadian Shooting Sports Association has the same logic applied that Benny has, and I think he specifically references forensic measurement.
Yeah,
but that's not a legal definition. That's just like a standard practice of measure in forensic sciences.
But that's the problem, is that one way or the other, and this is the thing that's funny about this whole thing, is like, you're meant to shoot it with that in, and why would any idiot, like, I agree. However, as we
have lots of idiots, though, so...
Yeah, as there is no legally defined process for measuring it, it's debatable. And there can be no debate if something is prohibited or not. It needs to be black or white. Either this is prohib or it's not, because you start getting into a whole rabbit hole of issues with, well, okay, if you have to include chokes and or muzzle devices, then if you have, a break on your rifle that is over 20 millimeters, are you supposed to remove that when you measure it? Or is it like, it's less than 20, then all of a sudden you've got one of those massive ones with the giant gills, and, the hole is bigger because it's a multi-caliber one and everything. So you measure at the end, well, that's over 20, even though the projectile coming out is way less than that.
Well,
so you start getting into that.
I don't think this is going to stand up to any significant legal challenges or... And I mean, Bill Blair has already twittered that this does not apply to your 12 gauge shotguns. But I question that the interpretation of this black letter regulation. It says 20 if the bore is over 20 millimeters. That's fairly
straightforward,
concrete and defined.
Yeah.
No, I don't like it and agree with it, but I mean, like, it's black letter law in effect. I mean, it's not. It's a regulation. It's not a law, but like it is. There is not a lot of room for interpretation. Exactly. There's not a lot of room for interpretation on that. It's over 20 millimeters. It's over 20 millimeters.
Yeah, they don't mention with or without a choke in it. They don't mention with or without any sort of muzzle device or whatever. So you have to take it for what it is. And if you have a 12 gauge shotgun that you've, backboard to put a Van Comp or whatever into it, then that could easily put it over, even though that's not a choke. So now
I agree. I do think that this is a tactic by the firearms lobbies. And I think this is a good tactic, but I think this is a tactic by the firearms lobbies to get gun owners who would not otherwise be affected or concerned about the ban of the scary, dangerous black assault rifles.
Yep.
I think this is an opportunity to engage the other million firearms owners that don't own restricteds and say, look, they're coming after your thing. Look at how this is written, because the government can backtrack and do whatever it wants. But if you look at the black letter law and you read it as written,
Blair can make
10 and 12 gauge shotguns are prohibited, and Blair can tweet whatever he wants about it, but that doesn't change what they wrote on the ordering council.
And so like some other stuff has come out with this where like they said, oh, they haven't changed the FRT numbers and all that. Like, okay,
FRT is not a legal document.
Well, but that's the thing, Also, they've started doing that now to 8 gauge shotguns, which are absolutely over 20 mil. So those are prohibited, but they didn't get that initial go around. And there's a few other items that have been added. So, like, I don't want to call out people, but they've said it themselves. So Blackleaf Industries makes a 9 mil AR that on the initial list wasn't there, but their FRT number got, changed. It's now prohib instead of a restricted.
But it's not. But who notified them? Did the RCMP?
No one. They found out on the FRT that it was changed.
Yep. But so, like, there are things that were not on the list that are now becoming prohib because they've just found out about it. So just because your FRT number hasn't been moved from one column to the next doesn't mean the thing that you have is not prohibited. And that's the problem with this. The ambiguity is you can't have that. It either needs to be.
How could they have moved all these firearms, and they had to do it through OIC, and they printed them in the Gazette. That has legal standing. But all the RCMP has to do is just switch some numbers from a different column, and all of a sudden they've accomplished the same thing.
Well, no. So
it's a database, so it stands to reason that, yes, you would literally just write a database query that says, if name is part of this list, then status equals prohibited.
Yeah, and I'm sure that FRT list has make, model, manufacturer, caliber, bore diameter, length, like all of the things. Because, I mean, if you've gone to a gun store and they've put together and cobbled an AR for you with this barrel, that barrel, at the different pieces, they have to issue you an FRT in order to sell that to you, unless they sell it to you as a lower only and you put it together yourself.
Well, and then you register it near me and you make the CFP create a new FRT number, because I've had to unfortunately go through that process more than once, because they're like, that's not a thing we have. I'm like, well, that's a thing I built, so...
Exactly, right? So your FRT isn't really the be-all and end-all of it. It's just like that's the database it's captured in. And if they, like in my opinion, are so inept at doing this, that all of this happened by mistake and they're caught off guard. So they didn't even have a list of things to give to the RCMP to say, here you go, this is what we're switching over. So when they were down for maintenance, they didn't know to add these things to their list as well, right?
Yes, they're being added.
I think that just belays the point that they clearly don't know what they're doing. It's going to have zero effect, because if it did, they would have the solid data to back it up.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of what the whole thing is. It's like they didn't tell the CBSA at all about any of this. They have a bunch of things in here that don't make sense, and not just like for us, but just in general, right? Like you can't do that. Like it either shows they're totally inept or they're liars. It's one or the other, which I think are both in our favor.
I would say we shouldn't generally attribute things to maliciousness where incompetence would explain it, but in this case, I think it's a little bit of column A and a whole lot of column B.
Well, yeah, I mean, the tinfoil hat theory is they knew exactly what they were doing and waiting to see what the pushback was. So, yeah, hopefully all of the people out there that had shotguns got fired up about this. And for those, like after Blair tweeted his thing out, which I don't care how many times he tweets, that's not law. Like, you could tweet whatever you want, Blair.
But no, I'm pretty sure Twitter makes it law. Like,
it's not law.
Twitter is more binding than an ordering council, right?
Skoka Mayhem, I think he agrees with you on that one.
But like, I will say there's one other good, like, it got a bunch of people fired up that would not have been fired up otherwise. But also when you go and look at the number of people that are stroking Blair's cock now that he said that they're not banned. Those are the people.
You're saying we should build a list of Twitter profiles based on who's stroking the government penis?
Yeah. Those are the people that are not in our corner.
All right, so I'm going to go make a Twitter and get like a follower list of people that stroke the Minister of Safety, and I'm going to keep that list for reasons.
Yeah,
So-
those people are worse than the liberals because those are people that should be on our side, but are content because nobody's coming after their stuff.
I wonder if the CSSA is doing the same thing. Their most recent email that they put out with a survey on it asked the exact question: are you for or against the liberals' most recent gun ban thing? And if that's not 100% no, they are not with it. And I think the CSA has to revisit who these people are and what their intentions are in their organization.
I think that's fair. Let's do another email. The Albertan. I know you're listening, buddy. I can see you there in the comments, being a superstar, just like on Mondays. Got an email. Apple whiskey and rage. So I made the mistake of being on Twitter all last week. I'm disgruntled to say the least. Twitter erases any hope that I have for the collective intelligence of humanity. On the plus side, my range is still open and I had the kids out shooting a rimfire silhouette on Sunday. The extra practice come in handy when we release them back in the wild because our economy is fucked and we can't feed them anymore. I have apple whiskey ready to go, and I'm eagerly waiting to hear tonight's episode from the comfort of my reloading/gun room that is now a workstation. Because coronavirus, also I don't realize how fortunate I do realize how fortunate I am to still be working from home. We survive in spite of the government, not because of it. Fuck Trudeau, the Albertan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry that you had to be shooting silhouette because that's kind of boring, but at least you were out shooting. That's the important thing.
You know what? I have a soft spot for silhouette. Silhouette could be a lot of fun if it wasn't shot by people who shoot silhouette.
Yeah, that's fair. That's like a lot of shooting sports, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say like an
I'm sure,
Cowboy kind of person.
Yeah. If IPSC and Cowboy Action didn't have IPSC and Cowboy Action shoots, it'd be a lot of fun.
So, yeah, I mean, basically, I'm enjoying the whole coronavirus work from home thing because, like, I don't have to interact with people because I'm a knowledge worker and I work from home. I don't know. Good luck on the, I think the apple whiskey, I'm sure the Albertan will pipe in on the YouTube here. He sent us a picture. I think it was the Weiser's apple whiskey. I don't think it was the Crown. I'm curious to do like a
side by
side. Yeah, like a Pepsi challenge kind of a thing.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, when we're finally allowed to meet in person, we should do the side by side apple whiskey challenge and stream it. That could be a thing.
Yeah, check out our Instagram. We'll do a live.
Yeah. We could
shots. Everybody, Little Wayne.
Yeah. Although I don't think that's.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works. No.
No, I think that's that Raffle or LMFAO or whatever. That's the one.
No. Who does shots?
Yeah, it's LMFAO.
Is it?
Well, yeah, we all do shots. Like I've done shots with all of you, but
I was right. It was the Wisers. So I didn't include a picture because it's show notes. We don't really pictures don't upload well.
Yeah.
Let's look at an email from MD. Also picture related content. So for an audio podcast, this I'm sure is riveting content.
Yeah.
So this is from MD. Subject: enjoyed the show. Hello, CPP. Came across one of your podcasts and putting this together while listening to it. Had some fun. Hope you like it. Peace and respect, MD. And if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see our new Facebook header banner profile image thingy. It's a dude with a suppressed AR with a big scope, and it's kind of green and camouflage and has belts of ammunition and says Canadian Patriot Podcast. Yeah. It's cool. I put it on the Facebook. Thanks for sending that in.
Yeah, it's pretty boss. Not gonna
lie. Patrick Patterson says the first person to puke on camera gets a prize, and I'm afraid that Gavin is the perennial winner of that game.
Hey, whoa. I puke after drinking. Like the next morning, multiple times.
Have you ever partied so hard that you slept for 6 hours, got up, and then vomited?
No.
If you haven't, just wait till you get older. When you're younger, you puke the night of. When you get older, it's that next day that gets worse.
Yeah, good times.
So you've got that to look forward to.
Good times. All right. Well, let's actually address a YouTube comment while we're going, because this one's an interesting question. Muskoka Mayhem, who, again, thank you for being a regular listener, tuning in, commenting, being a real rock star in the comments. How low key will SHOT Show be now? To quote another famous urban artist, "SHOT Show be off the hook, dog."
Yeah. If anything about SHOT Show is low key, it's because of the coronas, not because of this. Because I still plan on going. I still plan on having a shit ton of fun and hanging with my homies and drinking and taking all of the pictures and if we can't, like, if I can't shoot my AR between now and January, guess what I'm doing when I'm in Vegas? Shooting a fucking AR.
Yeah, well, I mean, I make it a point anytime I go to Vegas, go to the machine gun place and rent the fully automatic machine guns and shoot the fun. It's expensive and it's silly, but like, I get a kick out of it. It's something I do once a year, so whatever.
Yes, Benny, that is a business expense. It's entertainment and or training. It's
yeah. Fun. Have your accountant talk to my accountant.
Yeah.
So yeah. Oh, I think there's some confusion. So Muskoka Mayhem, you can't buy a ticket to SHOT Show through our link. You're talking, I think, about TACOM. We have a link in the show notes to TACOM.
And
TACOM is a public show in Canada, in the Mississauga Center, or in the International Center in Mississauga, that is organized by the same fellow that owns Firearms Outlet Canada and has been a very well-attended show, and this would be its third year?
Third, yeah.
If it were to run, which is a very different experience from SHOT Show, which is held in Vegas and has been happening every year since forever. I don't know, I think 25 years now, something like that, 30 years?
Something like that.
It's an industry-only show. You have to be in the firearms industry in order to apply to get a ticket and attend SHOT Show, and if you don't, you can get a lifetime ban. Ask people that have never been on our panel.
Yeah.
So,
both, though, will be a lot of fun.
But SHOT Show still going to be off the hook. TACOM, whatever. We're still going drinking that weekend, so good enough.
Yeah, if TACOM is on, we'll have the podcast booth there, and I mean, maybe we'll apply to have an ATT to transport our guns to a firearms show so that we can at least show them off to people. You can fondle it if you've never fondled one. Some of us may or may not have things that are on the prohib list. Who knows? We could ask
Bill Blair if he'd like to attend, and maybe people could like fondle his firearm.
Yeah.
Well, what he used it for how many years, or he carried one for how many years on the police force?
I'm not talking about his pistol, Benny.
Yeah. Well, I guess he carried that while he was on the police force too.
Wasn't it a Texas student committee who walked around with those kind of pistols? Where's the camera? Pistols instead of firearms.
Yeah. No, there was a university in the U.S. that had giant dildos instead of pistols. Although I don't think that Blair's is giant, contrary to what people believe.
No, more like a Derringer.
Yeah,
like a pocket pistol.
Yeah. So, or just like a straight up innie, but like whatever.
Let's get another email here from Todd. Todd, I'm sorry, this was from a while ago, and I kept putting it off because I kept forgetting to copy and paste into the show notes, and then like we'd be doing the show and be like, oh, I know there's an email in my inbox and I need to move. But anyway, sorry, finally getting around to it. This is a coronavirus thing. So, Todd's email is, hey yourself.
So.
No, but for real. Todd's email reads, guys, my buddies and I are having a debate about the potential martial law and what would entail here. We all agree that the armed forces don't have the reach, but me being paranoid and hateful towards all things liberal, except liberal Tim, of course, don't put anything past these ass clowns. I'd expect some amount of fuckery from these fools if it keeps going and the economic predictions of unemployment and depression levels come true. My law enforcement buddy has tactical friends pulling 24-hour shifts, responding to all number of calls trying to keep the crazies in the box. It also appears that the cops and first responders are getting disproportionately hit with the virus. If our police forces become significantly degraded and the turd invokes the Emergencies Act and orders military to aid civil power, what do you think that would look like? What would likely be the force's area of operation geographically, major cities, airports, capitals? What would you expect local operations in trouble areas? Surrounding an area to do search and seizure of firearms? It'd be interesting to hear your take, Todd. So we've kind of seen that. They didn't really get the Emergencies Act that they wanted. the military has been involved, and this was my prediction. I think we covered this on the show. Well, I might have only said this privately, but I'm pretty sure we covered this on the show. My prediction was the same thing that happens during ice storms and floods. You'll see them being ambulances and filling sandbags and running soup kitchens and generally doing non-combat-y type things because it's a bunch of hard, not necessarily bright, working individuals that you, Private Bloggins, go fill this sandbag. You, Private Bloggins, take the lav and go to this address and put somebody in the back of it. Like, it's not the most mentally taxing work available. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like you're not going to have these people doing like kicking indoors and doing house-to-house raids.
For the most part, you're going to get the GD guys, not the pipe hitters.
Coming from with different kind of military experience than you, Andrew, I don't see them being issued rifles to carry out any operations in our major cities.
That's my thing. Is they're going to be doing domestic, like civil service, civil affairs type work.
Yeah,
but I guess that all kind of depends. Like, so yes, I would agree with you guys for the most part that like they're going to be doing the bullshit work, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean that's the thing is the majority of our military is not shooters, not even like line infantry. Never mind like special forces, cool guys like black eyes and green rifles. No, wait, the other way around. Green eyes and black rifles.
Yeah,
right. Like most of the military is support staff, so we have lots of nurses and cooks and dentists. And search and rescue pilots.
They've already had those guys on standby, and there was a big convoy of them that drove through Toronto up to Borden to have them centrally located for if and when they're needed and all of that. So, I mean, that was already done. But I think personally, there's degrees. So, like, if they did put us all on lockdown and we behave fairly well, then it doesn't go any further than that. But, like, the longer the lockdown goes, the more stir-crazy people get. As you're seeing, like, the longer this whole nonsense goes on, the more stupid little things are happening. And fortunately, it seems like we're going to start opening up again soon-ish, depending on where you are, so that'll ease off. But if it kind of kept getting more and more restrictive and went on for longer and longer and longer, I imagine people would start getting more and more stir-crazy, causing more and more problems, which would require a more aggressive response.
Yeah, I think that's fair. If we were looking at I think was it the Albertan, the Skokomiam, somebody asked like what they could actually lock down. You could maybe lock down a major city with a regular force like infantry battalion. So if 2 RCR from Petawawa rolls into Ottawa, like you could maybe put an infantry unit to like lock down all the major in and out avenues from Ottawa. But you're only talking about a couple of hundred people, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's 9 Reg Force infantry battalions, I think. So you're talking about like 300 dudes a pop times 9, something in that order. Like you're talking about a couple thousand people in the whole country. Okay, now you got like reservists, and you have all your other supporting elements outside of your line infantry. But I mean, like, in terms of, like, people that they're going to give rifles to go, like, guard that bridge, it's a couple thousand people.
Well, I mean, even if
they're
you
not
roll in,
everywhere.
Yeah, even if you roll in, you know, the reserves and the RCMP and provincial and municipal police forces, like...
But then you're pulling those resources from the rest of the country. So
well, but I mean, even if you were to distribute them like evenly across, that's still not enough.
I don't think
you couldn't really. Like
No,
I don't think you could distribute them evenly across. I think that you're going to see the places where there are major Canadian Forces bases with full-time infantry battalions being called up to do effectively civil affairs work in affected urban centers. So everybody in Petawawa is going to Ottawa and driving the LAV ambulance and handing out soup at the soup kitchen, right?
Yeah, hay boxes for everybody.
Yeah, right. And like, what are our friends in Gagetown going to do? Like, our friends in Gagetown are going to get put on a C-130 and sent somewhere because there's nothing in New Brunswick worth defending. Like, no, New Brunswick's locked down, boys. Better not have anybody out for a rip, eh? Like, it's New Brunswick.
Yeah, they may go to Halifax, Quebec City, like
I would
somewhere
see
that.
I would see large urban centers that are full of like liberal stronghold voting blocks. Toronto,
Yeah,
maybe Vancouver,
yeah.
Ottawa, Montreal,
I mean,
Quebec City.
realistically, those are the places that you would need to lock down because, I mean, there's centers of commerce and business and all of that with, the stock exchange buildings and stuff like that, that like if those get fucked up can cause worse things to happen. And just the density of the population is that's where you're going to have problems. Like locking down rural areas isn't going to do anything because those people probably know the back roads better than anyone. So they will get where they need to go. I mean,
I think we have seen some stuff like in Quebec, their reservists. I think there might even be Reg Force medical people that got put into the seniors' homes, the assisted care homes in Quebec. So the Army got tasked with running those. And from what I understand, one of the dental units at CFP Borden, they got assigned to working for telehealth. So they're at home answering the phone for like the I don't feel good hotline. But I don't think we're going to be seeing massive civil unrest due to COVID.
No,
the Emergencies Act thing didn't really pass. I don't.
Yeah, fortunately, provincially, there was enough pushback at the federal level to stop JT from doing that. Because they're like, nah, bro, we got this under control. Like, just stay in your fucking cottage and don't fuck shit up for us.
Yeah, try not to mess anything up during your press conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in short, we don't think they're going to do much.
Well, I think at this point it's fizzling out. Yeah. I mean,
but it's civil affairs work, just like it always is, because that's what domestic operations are.
Yeah.
Maybe the one exception to that is High River, but even then, I question how much of that was the CAF and how much of that was the RCMP.
Yeah, and even then, like, the bulk of the people there were doing bitch work to get people out safely and this and that and everything else. There was a few people that, kicked indoors and got people's firearms, but that was when the people had already left. So even then, it wasn't like a total, like, military lockdown and this and that and everything else. It was... They got everyone out, and then they locked the area down to keep people from coming back in, which is a different thing.
Well, and a place like High River where you have, in effect, two roads, one going north and one going south. I mean, that's a lot easier to lock down than say, the greater Toronto area where every road goes out if you drive far enough.
Well, exactly. I mean, like, we were saying, like, if you had a couple hundred people, you could effectively sort of stop people from going into a major city. But I mean, if you had
depends on the city, like Ottawa, I think you could do it. Because there's only a couple of major highways out of Ottawa, and there's some bridges to go to Quebec. The bridges are easy to close. The SQ did it.
Exactly. But like, a small town, if you had 100 people or 50 people, you could easily lock down a small town. But what do you define it? But like, exactly. Why would you do that? And two, where do you define the town, right? Is it like the intersection with the 6 buildings at it? Or is it like the greater area where you've maybe got some more rural property? So like, it's pointless, right?
Yeah. Let's do another email. This is from my iPhone. I feel like that's just like the default. It was sent with my iPhone, but whatever. Yeah. This is called listener feedback.
Ooh. Perfect. It's in
I have a few questions.
And everything.
I have a few questions. Has anyone else thought that maybe the Trudeau government has some involvement in planning of the Nova Scotia incident? I kind of find it odd that everything seems to fit his plans to steal our guns from us. An abusive white male goes on a shooting rampage with a semi-auto rifle, makes a guy think that's for sure. As for COVID, wow, the numbers really don't add up. Might sound like a dick, but we just destroyed our economy because World Health Organization said to. I don't know if this would have been 20,000 deaths instead of 2,000, if I would feel any different. But I still don't think it was worth it. All these pussies say if it saves just one life, it was worth it. Well, if a semi-auto rifle saves just one family from a scumbag in Canada, it would be worth it as well. Leave my guns alone, Trudeau. I will take care of myself. Yeah, I mean, was it a false flag? That seems unlikely. Could it have been a false flag? Sure. Gay ops are possible. Gay ops happen all the time. The government loves doing gay ops.
I mean, I think, though, like, I would agree. Like, yes, I think there's different levels where they planned it, they let it happen, and, like, no, like, absolutely not. And, I mean, I think if they were going to plan this, they would have made it so that the guy had, like, a legally owned AR.
Well, that's what I mean. It depends on how hard you want to believe they did a gay op.
I mean, he would have used his own weapon instead of taking the police officers.
Well, and the fact that they still haven't released what firearms were used in this is what leads me
I don't
to
like
believe.
that we're calling this a shooting rampage in this email either. We've talked about this a little bit, and again, not criticizing individual police officers, criticizing the institution, the bureaucracy, if you will, that is the RCMP.
Yeah.
That's the part where I feel like there's some gay opping going on. It's like, they had a picture of this guy's car pretty fast, and it looked like a real car, and apparently the only way you could tell was because of the number that was painted on the side. But they had a picture of it, like, with the dealership information in the window. Also, that we're calling this a shooting rampage, it wasn't really, because it was like 16 separate crime scenes, and it wasn't really like he didn't go to a movie theater and, like, shoot everybody. He burned a bunch of people in houses.
Spree.
Yeah. And that's,
killing spree,
where
definitely.
I would certainly say they are not giving us all of the information, and what information they are giving us is certainly put through a filter and twisted around to make things go their way. Even like there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of things to just make you go, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
It doesn't add up. Well, and that's the thing, is like, this is what I was saying earlier. I don't want to contribute things to maliciousness that can just be contributed to incompetence. And I feel like a lot of this, I mean, it could be a gay op by the government, but I feel like it was just incompetence at various levels of a massive bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they could have sent out an Amber Alert. They could have told everyone hours earlier that he was dressed like a police officer and driving what looked to be a police vehicle. There's definitely a lot of questionable information around this.
Well, there's a new thing that came out apparently where the guy was, headed to Halifax or in that direction, and the Halifax police heard about it, knew about it, and did nothing about it, didn't send any additional resources, or even tell people in the area that, hey, this is coming your way. So, like, there's a lot going on. But yeah, I don't think it was planned. I mean,
if it was planned, I would have hoped the government would have made it faker and gayer than they did. Like, it just doesn't seem to be very well executed. And again, that doesn't mean it wasn't like incompetence, that like they knew this guy was unhinged and was like threatening to do something and just, sort of watched it happen. But I feel like that's the level of government involvement, if there was any, was like, it was just not well handled.
It's all
and
after
bureaucracy
the fact.
failed.
Yeah, it's an after the fact meddling rather than a
It seems like there was a lot of, or it could just, you could contribute to, it's just a cover up of their own incompetence, not a malicious intent. Like Andrew's saying, they screwed up at every turn, and we can't let everyone know we don't know what the heck we're doing. So,
yeah, like, I mean, if this had been planned by them, like, it would have been, like I said, a legal gun owner with, all of the things on their prohib list that they wanted to ban, and
not to give the government ideas, but like,
if you wanted to make specifically minorities and vulnerable people, and like,
right, that's the thing, is if you wanted to make a fake gay op, like, you could make a much better faker gay op than this with a little bit of planning. Yeah. Not that I'm saying the government should do that. I'm just saying, like, it wouldn't be a lot of work to use an actual machine gun with over capacity prohibited magazines and intentionally, like, let the crazy people run wild. Like, it'd be pretty easy to make this a lot faker and gayer than it was.
Yeah.
Let's do a question from Ryan. Or I guess this is a series of questions. So, email from Ryan. Subject, questions. Good morning. Good morning, Ryan. Good morning. What's with the Rod Giltaca thing at the end of every episode? What are your plans to grow your show, brand? How long is it going to take Andrew to find a new beer? what is your favorite legal firearm now that the AR-15 is in purgatory? So we'll go.
We're not answering that last one.
We'll go bottom to top. My favorite legal firearm is the one that I'm allowed to do stuff with. I'm not picky. I'm you could consider me like a firearm slut, but not like the kind that pose on Instagram.
Yeah, diversity is your strength when it comes to firearms.
Right? Like more guns is more better. Now I'm not saying like going out and buying more guns right now is probably not like a sound financial decision, but hey, we're an entertainment show, not a financial advice podcast. So if you want financial advice, call Dave Ramsey or somebody else that's good at math and numbers and that.
No. Firearms are a great investment. They generally keep their value unless they've been prohibited, in which case then you're boned.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Is like I wouldn't be going out and buying a new gun, but I mean, I don't know, favorite gun that we can.
I don't even want to answer for the
let's change the question.
People that are
if you could, sorry for those 5 people in Miramichi that are listening to this. If you could own any firearm, let's answer that question rather than what's legal. Let's entertain the audience. Gavin, if you could own any firearm, only one firearm, what would it be?
Oh man, if I could only own one, oof.
That's right. The Highlander of firearms.
Oh.
That is a good question.
If I could only own one and one only, I would have to go with something like a Stag 10. I mean, I'd like to say an FAL, but I just think the Stag 10 would be a little bit more lighter and more versatile as opposed to, even though same round and all that, I just think that Stag 10 would be the way to go because I can use it to go hunting and defending, allegedly, if we were allowed to do those things in this country.
All right, Benny, if you could.
So I was initially going to say MP5, but with Gavin's point, like I'm thinking something that's a little more like well-rounded. I think an AR-10, like a Stag 10, would be a better round. You can do long distance shooting, you can do hunting with it, and you're not stuck in a box. Like with an MP5, what are you doing? You're IPSC?
No, I think you're robbing.
No, I don't think you would be doing IPSC with an MP5.
Well,
I mean really
PCC
cool sub-gun match, though. Yeah. Best PCC gun ever.
Yeah.
Also, it would probably actually be a terrible PPC gun to compete with, but that's...
Whatever. Does it matter? Like, it's not for the poor, so fuck them.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I think an AR-10, something with a large semi-auto, large caliber, so an AR-10 would fit that.
All right, my answer, actually, Gavin already touched it. If I could own one rifle, if I could own one firearm, the firearm I would own would be a modernized FAL. If you could have an FAL that had been accurized and had a Picatinny rail on it, if they took the FAL and just like brought it up to current standards, I would definitely shoot an FAL.
So like if it went through the same process that the M16 went through, and they modernized it. Yeah.
If I could get a modernized, just give me an FAL receiver and let me do the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if
because
that
I
was
would build
a
tricked out FAL.
Yeah, if that was
and
thing,
it would have the rock and roll switch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we can only have one. Yeah, if we can only have one, it's going to be.
It has to cover all. It has to check all the boxes.
That's right. That's right. I'm getting the rock and roll switch. I'm getting a Picatinny rail. I'm putting a PEC 15 light laser combo on it. I'm getting those big, ugly 30 round 308 magazines.
So to answer the Albertan, the reason I wouldn't go for a Galil, even in chambered in 308, is they're probably really, really heavy. So I still would go with the Stag 10. Yeah,
Galil is a heavy gun.
Yeah, and if you're gonna get an AK, get an AK.
Yeah, but this is like an AK with a funny hat.
Yeah.
Bottle opener and wire cutter.
All right. How long is it going to take Andrew to find a new beer? Forever, because we can't get official beers anymore. Coors Banquet was the official beer of our gun club. By gun club, I mean like the people that we normally shoot with, the league that we're involved in, our group of firearms instructors that we hang out with, like the people that are regularly on the podcast. Coors Banquet was
the official beer of our chicken wing eating club.
Right, that's what it was. The chicken
Yeah.
wing eating club. So, I don't know that I'm going to find a beer to replace it. I mean, I'm not even a lager guy, to be honest. I don't really like lagers, but Banquet is the best lager I've ever had.
Well, it was reasonably priced. It's available everywhere, and when you're done shooting for the day or you're done setting up a match, it just it went down smooth when it was cold.
Yep.
Right,
it's just a good solid work beer.
Yeah, it maybe wasn't anyone's favorite beer, but nobody hated it. So if you're like, oh, here you go, no one would turn it down.
When there's 20 guys that have just spent 6 hours setting up a match and moving steel around and building props, and no one's managed to lose any fingers or anything to the skill saw, somebody busts out the Yeti cooler full of beer, and it's like, oh, Banquet, cool. Everybody's going to take one.
Yeah, but if it was oh, I brought a cooler full of Guinness, there'd be some people out there that just don't appreciate fine beers.
Well, no, and I don't want a Guinness after I've done a bunch of hard work. I want a Guinness when I'm having a really solid beef stew.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. So we'll have to find a new beer. I don't know. We might just not have an official beer anymore for our chicken wing eating club.
Yeah, it'll just be the official whiskey.
Albertan says it's time to switch to mead. I like mead. Marty, if he was on the show, would tell you about how he thinks all meads taste like cough syrup.
Which is weird, because you'd think a dude that has bees would be all about making the mead.
I have questions about his childhood.
And there's even a company that has Ragnarok mead, which I still need to try out of,
Quebec.
For reasons, if nothing else.
What are our plans to grow the show and the brand? We're not really planning people here at Canadian Patriot Podcast. We do an entertainment show. I think right now. Well, I mean, that's kind of okay, so history time. A small story, if you will. An anecdote, even. Once upon a time, I met the woman that I married, and she got tired of listening to me complain about the government and politics and said, why don't you go complain to your chicken wing eating club about this? And I said, we could just do a hangout on the computer, because I don't want to drink and drive. I'm a responsible adult. And then we started drinking on Monday nights and recording it and putting it on YouTube. And then we edited it and made it a podcast.
Yeah, and Andrew did
that was kind of the entire plan.
Yeah, and then I think I came on episode 4 or 5, and because I basically kind of was fed up with where we were going, and I posted a rant on the Facebooks. And
you were doing live streams to the Facebook. You were complaining about the government, and you did a thing when Lemmy died that I found really entertaining.
Yeah, and so Andrew and I had kind of already met and known each other, but not well. And he's like, so I do this thing. Do you want to get in on this? So I was like, yeah, it sounds exactly what I want to do. And here we are, 226 episodes later.
5 years later.
Yeah.
I need that. I think that's a SpongeBob drop, but yeah. Yeah, so I don't really. I think right now the plan is to try to go to this 2 episode a week format. I think we're going to try to go to a shorter show. Although I'm looking at the timer and it says we're at an hour and we still have a bunch of feedback to do. But I think we're going to try to go to a shorter, more frequent format and have the show tuned up a little bit more. And obviously, we're making an effort to be more engaged on social media. Although this is day 3 of that, so we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, but part of that is for all of you guys that are listening now live, which is awesome, but the people that are downloading, because we get 1,000-ish listeners per episode, which is friggin' awesome. We need you guys to share it as well, because we are hoping to make the show a little bit more palatable for people that aren't like us.
Drunkards with a lot of guns.
Yeah.
Those are the people like us, just so there's no ambiguity.
Yeah. So we need you guys to share it with your friends. So when you're going on a long road trip, when that's allowed again, because we're not allowed to unless you're Trudeau going to the cottage for Thanksgiving, play an episode or little segments, or tell people about us so that they can listen and get hooked as well, because we really are trying to push the education, I think, with all of this nonsense, so that more people are informed of what's going on, whether they agree with us or not.
Well, and that's kind of the fun of this, is I have never turned down anybody from being on the show. if you want to have a very different viewpoint, I mean, liberal Tim agrees with us on a lot of stuff despite his massively liberal tendencies. But I mean, like, we've had actual, like, avowed liberals on the show come and argue with me or come and explain to me how pot works because I don't understand drugs because it's not my cup of tea. It's not my bucket of beer, if you will.
Yeah.
So I don't really, like, I'll argue with anything about anyone. No, wait, I'll argue with anyone about anything? Yeah, something like that. And I mean, like, I have my opinions and stuff, but I've also, like, I have learned a lot in the last 5 years doing this with the amount of media that I consume to be prepared to speak on the many topics that we speak about every week.
Well,
and my perspective on thing has changed. So, like, I'm not the same person I was when we started, right?
No, and neither am I. And I would say, while, you know, the vast majority of the regular panelists have fairly similar views, we don't always agree on things either.
That's right. I swear redheads and Gavin says brunettes, but I mean...
Yeah. I mean, the one thing we can agree on, though, as long as it saves one life, it's totally worth it.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't know that we've got a very good...
that one.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've got a very good plan, but I mean, like, we're here to do an entertainment show. If you like what we like, I mean, great. Tell your friends. Give us some Patreon bucks. If you don't like what we like, I mean, open invite. Come and tell me why I'm wrong. Come and argue with me about the things I've said.
Yeah, send us the feedback so we'll read it on the next feedback show.
Yeah, and I mean, really the only rule is you just can't be mean to people and you can be on the show. And I've never kicked anybody off yet, but I mean, like, I'm willing to kick you off if you're going to act like a dickhead, but... Aside from that, it's open invite. Send an email and say you want to be on. We have lots of people come and go, and we have sort of Gavin is the other core person on this. But I mean, like, Tyler used to be on a bunch and now does a different thing because he's in a different place with his family. Sean used to be on a bunch and now he's in a different place with his business and his family. Tim makes it when he makes it. Marty's pigeons sometimes need to be replaced.
From time to time.
Yeah, Benny drops in. Benny does other podcasts. Ian does other podcasts. We've had other people from other podcasts on. We've been on other podcasts. Like,
yeah, we're basically podcast sluts, I think is how we should phrase it.
Yeah, basically that's a good way to put it. So, yeah, short answer, we don't have a plan. We're just going to keep doing us.
Yeah, just like everyone else should just do them.
That's right.
You be your best you.
And our best you is frequently drunk and complaining about the government while we fondle our guns. But I mean...
Off camera, of course, because if we do it on camera...
Because of the new YouTube rules, that's right.
Yeah.
Let's do Instagram questions. If you're not following us on Instagram, I'm trying to use it more. At Canadian Patriot Podcast, I put up questions letting everybody know that we were doing the feedback show. So from VDM2167... Really great username, by the way. Very descriptive. Can Tim make a Canadian version of the Come and Take It or Gadsden Flag t-shirt? I don't want to speak for Tim, but also yes. Tim can make anything on a t-shirt because Tim has a t-shirt press.
Yeah.
It's more of a question of will Tim do this, and Tim is very busy with work. But I don't see why he couldn't.
I mean, if you happen to watch the video version of the show, you will see above my head there is already a Canadian version of a Canada Goose that says "Don't tread on me, eh?" And some versions even have that underneath it in French or say.
So I'm sure Tim could. I don't know if Tim would, but I mean, we can ask. Let's ask Tim. Gunning Around, great podcast with person who used to be on our show quite frequently, Sean. He's now got his full-time podcast gig doing Gunning Around. Is it hard being so ridiculously good looking? And yes, Sean, yes it is. It's a lot of work. This beard does not comb itself.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's easy, but sometimes it's hard. I mean, you know, when you're in public and like other dudes come up and start touching your beard, that's just really awkward. Really Thankfully, the Coronas has stopped that.
Let's answer Bane Ironhand. Bane is a regular Monday night listener. Negotiation to appear magnanimous or going to go the hard line? I assume that we're thinking more what the gun orgs are going to do. My thing is hard line. We have a very restrictive firearms policy in this country. The Firearms Act is very, very strong. And if the government and police agencies would enforce the Firearms Act as written, criminals would not have guns. So I fail to see how me giving up any of the guns that I have owned for years, decades, would do anything to stop a criminal from using those guns to do criminal acts, because as we know, criminals don't follow gun laws. So I don't see a reason to negotiate on any of this. I don't see anything in the Ordering Council that's worth giving up. A rifle is a rifle, a gun is a gun, semi-auto is semi-auto. The current Firearms Act could definitely be used like some overhaul.
Yeah.
I feel if anything, it's just going to be like, okay, well, we banned these 9 guns, but like, if you agree to the AR, we'll let you have one of the other ones. And I don't like that. I'm not a fan. That doesn't work for me because
No. I mean,
there is no reason why I, as a licensed firearms owner, could not legally, safely own a full auto rifle.
I think negotiating belays the point that there is no reason for any of these firearms to be banned, or if they're like either you cover all the firearms that fit in this category, or you don't, and they haven't. And so by negotiating, you're just emphasizing that point. So either your law, your law isn't going to do anything, or you're an idiot.
I'm going to say this. Negotiating got us to where we are now. A death by 1,000 cuts. We've slowly given away this, we've given away that, and everything else, and we do need to draw a hard line at some point. And where people draw that hard line is going to be different. For some people, it's now. For some people, it was 10 years ago. And for other people, it's going to be when they clearly define that your 12-gauge shotgun is over 20 millimeters and you can't have it anymore. Or they make it 18 millimeters or whatever it is. But we do eventually need to draw a hard line. And right now, like, I think there's definitely some overhauling that can be done to our existing firearms laws, because there's a lot of nonsense in there. And I agree that there's no reason that somebody that passes a daily background check and is vetted and all of this stuff shouldn't be able to own a machine gun, like an actual machine gun.
Well, that's part of my argument, and this is a gun grabber argument, right? Like, only the police and military should have machine guns. Police and military are just people. Yeah. I had a machine gun, and nobody got hurt with it. I mean, despite what you would think, because you would think giving somebody in the military a machine gun, someone would end up getting hurt.
Yeah. But yeah, no negotiating. This is a time to draw a hard line. And yeah, I mean, fortunately, it seems that others agree with us. And I will say that all the gun orgs have kind of recently stepped up and joined forces as a united voice, which I thought would never happen. And then today, the CCFR dropped that they're actually suing the government and doing a charter challenge on this whole thing, which is huge.
Let's put a pause on that because I want to come back to that. But I see Bane Iron Hand is actually on the YouTube right now and is clarifying. So Bane on the YouTube right now says, I'm not in favor of a compromise on our part. I was wondering more about liberals trying to negotiate down legislation later to appear more reasonable. I don't think they're going to negotiate down, because what do they have to lose? Why would they?
It's already done.
Yeah.
Right?
If anything, it was the shotgun thing that they did intentionally but unintentionally. Like, it was that, let's put this in there and see if they notice and see what the pushback is, and then we can, like, so it'll be done sneakily on their part, not as a true negotiation.
I don't even think that the 20 millimeter part
I
of
think
the
it's
OIC,
pure incompetence.
It is absolutely incompetence, because they were trying to find a way to ban 50 cals without saying 50 cals.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But if they were going to do something, I think that's how they would do it. I just don't think they're smart enough, and that the whole thing was just pure incompetence on all of that, and like the 10,000 joules and it, capturing hunting calibers that are in there. Not many, but a couple big game calibers, and they're like, we haven't banned any hunting rifles, except for the ones that we did ban, and if the natives use them, they can keep using them. But for the rest of you folks, no. Just look this way.
Yeah.
Like, Pay no attention to the drunk cop behind the curtain.
Here's the bread and circus. Look over here. Yeah, I mean, and I know that there are people on YouTube like Alex that are going to disagree with overhauling the Firearms Act or the level to which it should be overhauled. My complaint with the current Firearms Act, aside from the fact that, like, on the face of it, firearms laws are dumb because they don't do anything except to people that follow laws, the same way as, like, laws against murdering people are dumb because they don't do anything to actually stop people from being murdered. But, like, if we just look at the Firearms Act the way it is now, if we could just clean up all the nonsense so that, like, named prohibitives were no longer a thing.
So I heard a couple years back that the Canadian Conservative Party actually voted, and the official party line is to revamp the Firearms Act. Whatever happens to that.
That was something that was discussed, and we had Richard Wakefield from the Conservative Party was on and talked about that because they did have that at convention 3 years ago?
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that?
Not this last one, but the previous one. Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the bigger problem right now is the Conservative Party lacks a leader, never mind a defined policy for which to campaign on.
So my question is, doesn't the Conservative Party have an official policy on the Firearms Act?
No.
I don't think so.
Kind of dictated by whenever their convention is, they ask about policy things, and also kind of ties in with whoever wins the leadership race on what they've campaigned on. So right now, I would say the Conservative Party respects gun owners' rights, whatever that means, but it's still to be determined
what they'll do.
I still think they are our best hope. And if you haven't yet, renew your Conservative Party membership or get one for the first time so that you can vote in their upcoming election. Because if anyone is going to do something about this, it's them. But what they will do and how far they will go, who knows? I mean, and careful when you say revamping, because the Liberals just revamped the policy as well, right?
Well, and that's my thing. Like, so I guess I don't want to spend too much time on it, but my take on the Firearms Act is, like, the Firearms Act that we have is more than enough. We have plenty of regulation to keep guns out of the hands of criminals if the laws would be enforced as written. We don't need all the caveats and addendums like named prohibited and named restricted. Just do everything based on what's in the Firearms Act with the technical characteristics, and we can go from there. Because all the other, like, specific stuff, it's all extra and onerous and doesn't help.
Well, I feel like even I'm pretty sure machine guns is listed in the act, no? And that could be taken out because what criminal is going to get their PAL and then getting, even if we put it under the restricted, how many of them are getting their PAL, getting the restricted?
Well, and that's my point. Criminals don't follow gun laws the same way that they don't follow drunk driving laws or stealing property laws or murdering people laws. Criminals don't follow laws, so this doesn't have any impact on criminals.
I'd be fine, like, if they wanted to make a third class of license that was obtainable. So, like, if they still wanted to call them prohibs because they don't want to rename all the categories, because I know that takes mental powers. Just call it prohib still, but allow the average person to maybe do an extra day of classes or go through somehow more stringent background check and send more money away to the government and apply for a prohib license as an individual and not as a business or somebody that happened to be born before a certain date and already own one of these things, right? Make it a third class license, like a class 3 license in the US where you can own a machine gun.
So let's go on to the next one from Corey0887. Does anyone know if Canadian_Minuteman is legit? This is Canadian Minuteman. He has a podcast. He's former CAF guy, Jimmy, like a signals tech. Seems good. Definitely has the right talk. Sounds like he was in the military. Sounds like he was even in our military. Is he legit? I don't really know what that means. He's a dude with a podcast.
Yeah, and all the stuff he brings forward is easily accessible, or supposedly. Like, I
mean, I will say that he is a fan of high quality training organizations. So
definitely a fan.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then second question, also from Corey. when are all the Patriots moving to Alberta? And I mean, I think that's a good question. Very quick anecdote. My family talked about moving to Alberta. We want to kind of see what happens with the way that Dougie's running Ontario right now and what it takes to actually move to Alberta. So, like, it's a thing I'm thinking about, but it's not like a thing I'm acting on, because my bigger concern is, like, I do all the stuff I need to do to close my business in Ontario, open my business, transfer it to Alberta, whatever, move my family, change my kid stuff, get my wife on board with that, move away from our families, which is fortunately how my wife and I are able to continue to work from home during COVID, is that we have family members that can look after our small child.
Yeah.
Moving to Alberta puts a flaw in all of that, and then I'm still under the thumb of the same federal government that hates me now, so I'm not really sure how much further I'm ahead.
Yeah. So
maybe if Alberta is serious about separating, that changes, but like right now it's a thing to think about. I don't know that it's a thing to do.
Yeah, and I would say I'm in that same boat where I have a head office here where I am just outside Toronto, but I also have a location in Alberta, so it'd be very easy for me to move, and I would totally be for it if Alberta steps up and actually goes through the motions. Because yeah, like, what's the point of changing scenery and spending all of that money only to have the same boot on your throat?
That's kind of my problem with that. Martin Cole 06 Instagram question. Tips for long-term storage and how deep holes should be dug, not related to the gun ban. And second question, which we've already touched on, how did the firearms ban affect hunting rifles as well as 12 and 10 gauge shotguns? A similar question was also asked by Max996611. I don't understand what everybody's like numbers in their Instagram profile is. I really don't get it. So we've already touched on this. The 12 and 10 gauge thing is the interpretation of the law as written. Law. I keep calling it a law. It's not a law. It's a regulation, and I really should say regulation, but
yeah.
We've already touched on that. As for hunting rifles, yes, there are some big game rifles that are definitely affected by this. Not just 50 cal rifles, but the 460 Rigby, 460 Weatherby, something like
460 Weatherby, possibly some others. I mean, the Swiss Arms hunting rifle, the VZ and CZ hunting rifles, the XCR hunting rifle, the Stag 10 hunting rifle, et cetera, have all been banned. Unless, of course,
fair.
You have...
I thought we were talking about the 10,000 joule energy limit thing, but you're making a very valid point. A bunch of hunting rifles were just banned. That's true.
So it
as for long-term... as for long-term storage and how deep holes should be dug, it depends on what you're storing.
Isn't it
where.
So, well, it really depends on how many rolls of TP deep you want to stack it.
But I think getting below the frost line is good, and anything metal, cosmoline if you can get it, or any other quality petroleum preservative, and just pack it on.
PVC piping, if you can do it to keep it, so that way then, like, you can unscrew a cap and reach down and just pull those rolls of toilet paper out one at a time. Or I mean, if you're really on the cheap, just like some really good thick plastic sheeting will help keep that nice and dry, so that, like, your precious TP hoard is still there like 20 years from now when you finally run out of the stuff that you have stored in your house. Yeah.
So
in times of emergency.
Naturally. So the other things, I mean, Gavin already touched on the lawsuit thing, which I think we should go into more detail on, not the feedback show, but be aware the CCFR has announced they are launching a legal challenge against this ordering council. I believe they're doing it as a charter violation.
Yes, they're doing a charter challenge on the ordering council because it violates a number of things. They haven't really gone into super detail yet, and they still have their legal team on it, but it is a work in progress, which is amazing. I don't see this as any negative. I mean, if they lose, then what difference does it make? Because it just affirms that the government can do what they've already done. But if they win, that sets a massive, massive precedent in our favor that will basically make it very difficult, if not impossible, for someone to attempt this again.
So I think we should have a separate discussion specifically around how that legal challenge could work and what our drunken thoughts on it are. The other things that are worth noting with the legislature today are e-petitions.
Yes.
Everyone remembers E2341. Yes, I finally got the numbers in the right order. It's only taken me like 100 episodes. E2341 was read in Parliament today by Glenn Motz. The government has not yet responded to it, but at least it's finally been read. And for everybody that doesn't remember or wasn't listening to us for the last 100 episodes where we talked about this, E2341 was a petition to respect the democratic process in this country and not ban guns through orders in council, which is the thing that just happened last week. On the famous communist holiday, May the 1st, we got the gun ban through the order in council. Glenn Motz read this in Parliament. 2 minutes into him reading it, Elizabeth May made a point of procedure objection that the member should not be politicizing the reading of the petition. And Glenn Motz responded, I think, very eloquently, and I will try to find a way to put it's on his Facebook page, the link from the C-SPAN. I will try to find a way to get that linked out so people can listen to it. It's about a 5-minute thing. It's 2 minutes of him reading, a minute and a half of him, Elizabeth May, and the Speaker of the House arguing, and then another minute of him wrapping up his 3 minutes of presenting the petition. So now the government needs to respond to the formally tabled and presented E2341, asking the government not to use order in council to ban firearms. So,
I mean, there was a lot of people saying that they ignored this. I mean, and they did, but technically, as it hadn't been read yet, they haven't ignored it. So they now have to table.
Yeah, don't worry that the government hasn't responded. The government now has to make a response as it has been read, although the Green Party did try to get it not read today.
Well, I mean, with the bar being closed because of COVID, I mean, Lizzie had... I know, Dizzy
Lizzie's having her
some time
to
speak, right?
But
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. If she would not interrupted, Motz would have been done sooner than it took her to interrupt. But anyway.
Yeah.
The other two petitions that came out that you want to go and look at, I think, the first one, 2574.
Yeah.
We, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the Prime Minister to immediately scrap his government's May 1st, 2020 order in council decision related to confiscating illegally owned firearms and instead pass legislation that will target criminals, stop the smuggling of firearms into Canada, and go after those who illegally acquire firearms, and apologize to legal firearms owners in Canada. And this has been sponsored by Michelle Rempro Gardner. Pretty good. I think as of the time of this recording, we are over 100,000 signatures. It's like 103,000 signatures as we record.
Someone said
something like that, yeah.
106, 800.
Amazing.
Okay, good stuff. There is another similar petition that was also launched mere minutes later. I think an oversight, not necessarily a mistake. I don't think we should have two of these on the table, but hey, whatever, go sign both because it doesn't cost you anything and it tells the government what we would like as, tax-paying citizens of this country. Yeah. So the other petition is 2576, so 2574 and 2576. 2576, we, the undersigned citizens of Canada, call upon the government of Canada to immediately repeal order in council issued May 1, 2020. And this is sponsored by Todd Doherty. And he is from Caribou Prince River, British Columbia. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's just an oversight that two people got petitions going at the same time.
Yeah, slightly different
minutes of one another.
Yeah, slightly different reasons if you kind of read through it, but same thing. And it just means that there's two things that now need to be read in Parliament asking for the same thing. So go sign them both.
So go sign them both. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost you anything. Yeah, the government's probably not going to do anything about it. They're not going to respect it. We already know that they don't respect our ability to own private property in this country. We already know that we don't effectively have rights in this country because the government, Big G, the governing party of the country can effectively do whatever they want without consequence or fear. But, I mean, for the time being, petitions are the way that we can voice complaint, right? That's the way that we are for now. Let's wrap this up. Gavin, where can everybody find you on the internet?
Oh, sorry. Before we go, I'm still in the petitions. Just, guys, make sure, for example, I don't know about anyone else, but for me, with my Gmail, I got the link email one after the other, but Gmail only showed me one. I had to scroll around and find it. So just make sure you do click that link in the email, and make sure you click for both of them.
Absolutely. And also, some of them are taking hours to get back to you because we crashed the petition website with so many people signing up.
I signed last night. I only got my emails this afternoon, I believe.
But yeah, you can find me on the Instagrams at Urbex_GTA.
All right, Benny, where can everybody find you on the internet?
BennyLewis.ca.
All right. If you've listened this long, you deserve a discount code. Go to RagnarOkTactical.ca. Use discount code Patriot at checkout. Save yourself some money. We will listen to your opinion. Please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us feedback at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Let us know what you think. Let us know how rustled your jimmies are. Tell me in 500 words or less why you refuse to sign another useless petition, because if I read one more fucking post on Facebook about that, I will not do anything that would be considered a threat of harm to myself or others.
But just do it. We know it does nothing except, maybe it will. And for little effort it takes, just fucking do it.
Just
don't be that guy that doesn't.
So yeah, we covered that stuff. Obviously we're long on this. We're going to try and do more feedback shows. Didn't think we had 90 minutes worth of content, but here we are. We're probably going to go to a feedback show like every second week right now, is what I'm thinking. So send us your feedback. We'll get back to you in a couple of weeks. We'll do a feedback show like this format, I think. Unfortunately, we ran long. I couldn't fit Rod in, so I have to apologize to Rod Giltaka. I'm sorry. I know interviews start at 6 a.m. Eastern time, which is 3 a.m. his time, and I know we record at 9 p.m. Eastern, so it makes for a long day.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We just couldn't fit you in today's show. Hopefully next week. For all of our listeners in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you were the true North, strong and free.